A few more people coming in. Okay, so if I just scroll through what I've got here, of course, tonight it looks like it's going to be clear here. Is everybody else going to get that as well?
I'm in.
So the Venus is approaching the Pleiades, so it's not far off now. And then tomorrow night it's going to be slap bang nestled up right next to it. So that's something to look out for.
Very nice.
There's a nice parade of planets in the morning sky. If you've got a nice northwestern horizon really low down, you've got Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars not that far from each other as well. And then, of course, make the most of the space station. Someone reminded me about this a little while ago before we came online. Of course, we've got 2 more passes. There's been some great pictures being posted recently of it as well, not just of the trail, but of the space station itself, which has been fantastic to look at. And we'll talk about that in a little while. So there's one at 8:47. So you can see in here, it's passing below Taurus and just above the belt of Orion. So it's fairly low down in the sky. So that's tonight. And then on the 4th, we've got that one as well, where it's going to pass below Orion.
Click on this.
Just below Rigel there. So so that's the next couple of apparitions. And then we don't get it for a while, I don't think. And then it appears in the morning sky. Okay, so for the meetings, in next Tuesday, we've got John Spencer, one of the guys on the team of New Horizons, going to tell us all about exploring Arakoth, which is this Kuiper Belt object that went past, what, a year and 3 months ago on New Year's Day. So hopefully tell us lots of stuff about that. Then we've got Terry Lovejoy, still hasn't given me a title yet, but he's going to talk, I hope, about comets, which would be good. And unfortunately, Space Station Guy, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce your name. I saw you come in a little while ago, so
It's every week.
how'd you pronounce your name?
Oh, me? Sorry, is that me?
Station Guy.
Hey everybody, hi, it's Sabuj.
Shablish.
Well, everybody calls me Sabi, so probably.
Right, okay, we call you
I
Shablish.
like the Sabi.
Okay, yeah, so he's going to talk about ISS imaging. It's not just the trails, so it's a close. Do you want to give a quick intro as to what you're going to be talking about?
Hi, yeah, sure. Hi everybody. I do manual tracked space station photography, and I run the spacestationguys.com website. And we're going to talk about some of the basics of the International Space Station imaging, and I'll show you some of my best work so far I captured. So yeah, join us on the 16th.
Excellent. And then Tuesday after that, we've got Paul Fellows talking about Hawking's black holes and the edge of physics. So that sounds like a bit of a brain tickler for that one. And then I thought we might have on the Thursday afterwards a Q&A session. So sharing of astronomy images and observations. So what people have been up to, because we're going to be well into the light nights by then. So yeah, does that sound good?
Yep.
Yeah. So if anybody can send us some questions, if we don't know the answer, then we'll try and find someone who can, or just throw them out there on the night, and hopefully there'll be someone in there who can answer the question. That sound okay?
Answers the question.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so share what you've been, and if we can get some live streaming going, that would be great as well. So ad hoc, I think there will be. So if I'm out there, I'll throw an ad hoc meeting and throw it out there, and if anyone can connect up and see what we're up to, and then anybody else wants to do that, let me know, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, so we've had the Q&A session, so I'll leave it over to Steve now. Who's going to talk about two eyes are better than one, and talk about binoculars, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm going to stop sharing that and let you take over, Steve.
Okie doke. Right, I'll see if I manage to foul that one up. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Steve.
Yeah.
So I just muted myself. So
right. Are you seeing me or are you seeing the screen?
We can see your slides.
You see my slide. Excellent. Okay, doke. So what we'll talk about tonight is essentially it's binocular observation of the deep sky, but going to look at right back to the basics of why use binoculars, what sort of binoculars you need, how to choose the things, what pitfalls to avoid, how to use them, and then some stuff to look at and how to find stuff to look at, if that makes any sort of sense. So here we go. So why bother to use binoculars? Well, first of all, they're a brilliant beginner's instrument. You know, everybody tells us when we start out in this game, start with binoculars, and but hardly anybody tells you how to. But we'll get around to that anyway. They are good that, but they're also, if you're prepared to invest a little bit in them, and we as astronomers tend to be real cheapskates when it comes to binos. If you look at what birders spend on them, it's a heck of a lot more than we do. So that's a really good serious binocular is an excellent piece of kit because they're portable, which obviously makes a heck of a lot of difference. The more portable something is, the more likely you're going to use it. They're dead easy to set up. How long does it take, really, if you're using handheld binoculars? Take them out of their case, put the strap around your neck, flip the caps off, focus them, and you're gone. Whereas the images, you know, with some of this weather we've had up until last week, you know, they'll be by the time they've set up and it starts raining. I've been observing for an hour and a half, so you know, it's good stuff like that. And then there's what's called the Binocular Advantage, and there's a few little experiments you can do to try this for yourself. So what is the Binocular Advantage? Well, quite simply, the easy way to remember it is you multiply by 1.4. And what that means is that if, say, you are using a binocular with 50mm aperture lenses, so something like a 10 by 50, you can detect stuff as faint as somebody using a single eye thing, like an ordinary telescope, that's using 1.4 times as much. So, you know, it's a 70mm. And this is partly because the way we've evolved to use two eyes, and there's a number of things going on there. First one is called statistical summation, and this really only applies to stuff that's very, very near the limit of our visibility. But what we have, because we've got two eyes. Hello. And I'd rewrite the lyrics and make them a bit more about he can help show you what to do in his current. Hello. Ah, right. So I'm hearing somebody talking over that. Okay. So we effectively, if you've got two detectors, you're increasing your ability to detect whatever you've got. Okay. And then there's what's called physiological summation, which is really to do with increasing the signal to noise ratio. It's almost like stacking astro images. You've got two inputs coming in, you push them together and you can reduce your signal to noise ratio. But this only really applies if you've got good vision in both eyes, or you've got well-corrected vision by using glasses or something like that. Otherwise, you will have it degraded. But you can try this for yourself. Just get a bit of text and hold it to the distance you can read just with two eyes and shut one eye, and it becomes difficult to read. We've got, you know, as I say, we evolved as two-eyed people. So there's these things when you're looking for stuff that's sort of really quite deep. And then there's the other things that go on that just make it look nice as well. So you get this false stereopsis, this idea that things look three-dimensional. Of course they're not. You know, something that's sort of hundreds of thousands of billions of miles away, there's absolutely no way that we are going to be able to see any 3D effect on that. But it looks like we do. And if astronomy can't look nice, then what's it for? And also possibly some people reckon you've got the negation of the blind spot. Okay, so that's a basic why. So common types of binocular, there's the sort of stuff that you can you're probably used to seeing, like the Poro prism binocular. That's the one that's cranked, and then there's roof prism ones which almost look like this straight through, and then I divide them up into another one, which is one with angled eyepieces. I particularly like 45-degree eyepieces. So let's look at a Poro. That's a cutaway of a Poro prism binocular, and So it's that sort of stepped crank design, and that's the light path through it. And these two lenses you've got here, one of them turns the image background left to right, and the other one turns it round, right way up. So you have those two sets of reflections there, and that sorts that out. The advantages are they're usually in any given price range, although this is changing now with better manufacturing methods. With you've got the best quality in that price range. Okay, for that they're relatively easy to maintain. I have no problem taking apart poraprism binoculars, trying to put them back together again and getting that. The disadvantages are they're bulkier and heavier than roofs, and cheap ones, and there's a lot of budget stuff around, you really easily lose collimation. That means you start getting a double image, and we'll look at why that happens in a bit. Then there's roofs, which are the straight through ones. Some people call them birding binoculars. They are not. They're binoculars. Someone would say, why do you use birding binoculars for astronomy? Well, they're binoculars. It's all they do. And they have a different system going on in there. So what happens there is you've got this roof prism here, but the effect is they're roundabout. They effectively as though they're straight through. So advantages of that, they're lighter, they're more compact than the poros. Because your focusing is internal, you shift a lens inside, they're easier to waterproof, and that does make a difference to us because we get hammered by dew if we're out for a long time. But they tend to be more expensive. They have to be made to 90 times the precision, the lens angle, the prism angles in there, about 90 times the precision of poros. So they tend to be more expensive because of that, and they're much more difficult to self-maintain. I do not take roof prism binoculars apart unless I'm expecting not to put them back together in and just take them because I want the lenses. And the aperture is limited by the straight through design as well, because if your eyes are, say, 65 millimeters apart, which would be pretty normal for an adult male, you obviously can't have lenses, if it's straight through, that are bigger than 65 millimeter aperture, because they couldn't line up with your eyes if they were bigger than that. So there are these limitations that go with it as well. That's why you generally don't see big roof prism binoculars. The 45-degree, the angled eyepiece ones, these are really nice. They make observing so much more comfortable, especially when you're looking at stuff at high elevations. But they're much more expensive because you've got that extra bit of glass in that 45-degree thing. And unless you're going to degrade the image, it's going to be expensive glass. So that doesn't help. And you've got to mount them. You can't just sort of do the normal thing you would do with binoculars is look at your target without the binoculars there, then shove the binoculars in the way. That's ultimately the way to do it. And with astronomy, if you can't see what you're looking at, you put the binoculars in the way. And if you can't see it, you go upwards because you're almost certainly looking too low. They need some sort of finder as well because of that. So things are starting to be complicated. Right, so what do we use? Binoculars, most people know this, described by two numbers. It's something like a 10 by 50. So that's magnification multiplied by the aperture of one lens in millimeters. And something like 8 by 40, almost everybody can easily handhold. 10 by 50s, most people can, especially if you learn to do it properly. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. My son, when he was just 8, 9 years old, he had some 10 by 50s, which I showed him how to do it properly. And one day he said, "Dad, I've found something." Well, show me what it is. So he devised a star hop, and he made a completely independent discovery of M34, that lovely little cluster on the border of the Perseus Andromeda region. So, if a 10-year-old can do that, 8, 9, 10-year-old can do that, he's obviously holding them steadily enough, but it's how you do it. 15 by 70, something like that, ought to be mounted. Most people can handhold them for brief periods, but really you see much more when they're mounted. And people who say, yeah, I can hold those steadily, actually, they can't. You can tell they can't. And then something as big as a 25 by 100, you've got to mount it. So what's the difference? I'm going to show you some images of some drawings, some makeups of M35, the cluster in Gemini. So that's about what it looks like from my sort of sight. I'm going to sort of reasonably semi-rural location, and there, in there, you can see the little cluster. Okay. Something like 15 by 70, start seeing you see a bit more, and you notice your sky background's getting darker, and then you put my big guns on it, the 37 by 100s, and you're really seeing a lot more detail. Aperture really brings it out because it allows you more magnification as well. Magnification dims your sky background, and the result of that is you get much more contrast and you can see more. Light pollution really has an effect. So this is two different binos. One is where I am now. If I decide to leg it down to Bournemouth or something like that, which sometimes we do because we do outreach stuff with schools and stuff like that, that's your Bournemouth or probably your London skies as well. You can hardly see anything. And you see how it really, light pollution really hammers it. But also that aperture does give you more. The ultimate light pollution is daylight. I took some kids down to the Royal Observatory, Greenwich, and Robin Catchpole was on the 28-inch, and we actually split Alboreo in broad daylight. So that's your ultimate light pollution. You go somewhere dark, like where I grew up, which is in Zimbabwe, or if you go somewhere like Loch Loyal up in Scotland or something like that, you see how much more you can see. So light is going to have an effect, and you can counteract it to some extent with aperture. But really, once you get to big apertures, it becomes less portable, let's put it that way. Okay, so I mentioned holding them. If you want to hold binoculars, you can try this. Put the first joint of your thumb into the corner of your eye. Let's, where are we? Right, are you seeing me now? Not, okay. And hold the binoculars there, hold them around the eyepiece. They feel like they're going to fall off, but they don't. So that is, that's a good way to hold them. And you see what my dear wife is doing there. She's creating stable triangles and also taking a lot of the weight of the binocular then becomes on her head, and that steadies it a lot. And it's amazingly more stable. If you're holding binoculars up high, you're going to start getting very tired arms very quickly. And if you're reclining, when your head's actually supported, that's a really good way to hold them. You can think about doing things like mounting them. You start seeing the problem there. That's me with some big binos trying to mount them there. It's difficult to look high, and you notice there, in our infinite universe of space-time, we've got 5 legs having a territorial dispute for a little bit of it. That's not good. There are other ways. Patrick Moore used to recommend these things. Sometimes they're called neck pods, and you support them around the neck. They're not really neck pods at all, and they're quite good. But really, if you really want to go for simple stuff, a monopod with a trigger grip ball head is ideal. Okay. Ultimately, well, not quite ultimately, parallelogram mount. That's the ones with the angled eyepieces, and they can give you a lot. And the other thing they do is they take you away from the tripod, so you don't get your legs tangled up. And you can see from that one there, if you've got one with long enough arms, then you can either use it reclined or you can use it standing. Other ways to steady it, just find any stuff, find a car roof, a fence, a tree, or something to lean on, or you can use cheap little beach chair, their arms resting on it, elbows resting on it. Well, it's resting on the armrest of the chair, or there, sort of resting on my lap with just hanging the binoculars from the top of it. Or over here, what we've got is the deluxe version, which is not only height adjustable, it's cranked, so it leaves a bit of clearance for astronomer's belly. And that's essentially like a DIY monopod. It's a window cleaner. It's about £4.50 worth of window cleaner. So that's the one extreme. The other extreme is this, which is called a star chair, and basically the entire thing is an altazimuth mount, and you just dial in where you want to go and it takes you around there, in this case with those socking great lovely 150mm Fujinons. If you're mounting your binos, you're going to have a dew problem sooner or later, and so nothing has big enough dew shields on them, so I make dew shields out of my poor wife's old yoga mats, and that extends those. And with that sort of system there, I can get something of the order of 2-3 hours on a fairly dewy night before I have to take other steps to do it. Okay, so that's a bit of an intro to that. Then we get on to the focusers that we need and the actual binoculars themselves. Astronomers tend to like individual eyepiece focusing because once you've got your target, you don't have to refocus it, and that's much easier to, one, to keep waterproof, and two, it maintains the focus. When you take something like the center focus, unless it's internal or unless it's really well implemented, you have a rocking bridge, and that puts things out of focus as that moves. It's really difficult to get there, to get a really good center focus on a poro prism. A few people do it. Pentax do a really nice internal focusing one. Okay, so what should you get? Internet advice. Internet advice tells you, as long as you're getting binoculars with back 4 prisms and fully multi-coated optics, you can't go wrong. Well, you can, and let's have a look at why. That's an array of binoculars, and that's a couple of them, and we'll have a look at what's written on the cover plates of those. So we've got on this one here, back 4 prisms and broadband FMC, fully multi-coated. Here we've got fully broadband multi-coated, well, pretty much the same, isn't it? And back 4 prisms. So they must be the same, mustn't they? Nope, they're not. Back 4. Back 4 is a bit overhyped in binoculars. There's 2 kinds of glass originally. Back 4, which is barium crown, and BK7, which is borosilicate crown. And if you look on the top image there, you see some little grey cutoffs on the borosilicate crown. And what that means is that the outside of your image is going to be very, very slightly dimmed down. Now, these are handheld binoculars. It's really, really easy just to move what's on the outside of the image where it's dimmed down to the center where it's bright. So you don't have to put up with that vignetting. The back 4 at the bottom, you don't get that. They internally reflect more light. But you notice something else there. There's something different about that. And the light control, stray light control on the bottom one is actually a lot worse. So, you know, the type of prism tells you absolutely nothing about that. And if anybody here uses bino viewers, your Denkmeyer Vino viewers, which are probably the best there are, tend to use BK7 because it's got various advantages. So it actually has better transmission and better better dispersion properties as well. But the problem with modern binocs is Chinese back 4 isn't back 4. The back 4 was originally Schott AG, the German glass manufacturer. Chinese called one. It's not even a barium crown, it's a borosilicate crown. And notice the different capitalization in there.
I think we lost Steve then. He seems to have frozen. That's unfortunate. Let's unmute everybody so we can have a chat while Steve gets himself sorted out. It's like he's fallen asleep.
Pretty decent prism cage,
Oh,
which you could take out.
Hold on, Steve. Hold on a second.
Back again.
We lost you for a little while, so I'll mute everybody. And then if I unmute you, Steve, and then carry on.
Okay, where do we get to, Dave?
Go back one slide. Oh, yeah, go back one slide. You were just talking about the Chinese version of the
Okie doke.
prism.
That's the Chinese one. So the Chinese one, it's got a higher inclusion count, so you get milkier images. So it's so don't think that if someone says, you know, it's got back 4 on the cover plate, that yeah, it's going to be a good binocular. It might be, but it also might not be. More important is how your prisms are held in place. This is decent prism cluster screwed in place, and they will withstand a lot of hammering. A lot of your cheap budget stuff has this bottom image there, and what you've got there, if you're lucky, it's got a screw on one end of the clip, and something like that, the moment you bash that, that prism shifts out of shape and you get a double image. So you need to learn, if you're getting budget binoculars, you need to learn ultimately how you are going to recollimate them. It's not difficult, but it's something you certainly need to learn to do. This is one of the trade-offs about budget stuff. We'll come to that. The other thing that was there was fully multi-coated. Well, it surprised most people to learn there's no such thing as an industry-wide standard of what fully multi-coated means. It could mean that just the air glass surface of the lens have 2-layer coatings, or it could mean all the air glass surfaces, including the prism hypotenuses, have properly applied 7-layer coatings. So, you know, you can't tell because it's not a meaningful thing to say. So here's, again, those couple of binoculars. You can see the top one is reflecting a heck of a lot more light, even though they are nominally both broadband multi-coated. So I think we can say from that what's written on that prism cover there doesn't tell you a heck of a lot. But then you think, well, sure, the other one, the 15 by 70 must. Well, no, it doesn't. That's a setup on my kitchen table. What we've got there is a laser, which is pointing into an old finder, which I'm using as a beam broadener, going into, and so it's collimated light into the eyepiece. So what comes out of this end on the bit of baking parchment held on by elastic band is effectively the aperture of the binocular, and that's what it is. It's difficult to read from that, but that's 62 millimeters, and that's meant to be a 70 millimeter binocular. So that so-called 15 by 70 is actually a 15 by 62. And you can do the same thing. You don't have to do a setup like that. All you need to do is hold a torch behind it, and you can hold a torch, sort of 4 to 6 inches behind the eyepiece, and you can project the image of that, and that will give you an idea. And I'll show you one later. You can also do it the other way around. Get some graph paper or something. Don't look at the sun, but look at a bright sky. This one hasn't come up particularly well. You just about see it's graph paper. And you can measure the exit pupil with that, if you've got millimeter graph paper, then multiply it by the magnification, and that will give you what your actual aperture is. And so the laser gave me 62. The LED torch gave me 62.5, and the exit pupil way of doing it, that image gave me just over 60. The point is, it's not 70. And to my mind, that is fraud. And why do they do it? Because the worst aberrations, as most people know, take place, the rays that come furthest from the center, furthest from the axis, and therefore you just take them out and you don't have to make so much effort with the optics. So I think we can safely say that that doesn't mean anything either. Right, and all of this stuff which we're told we should go for, there are loads of stuff it doesn't tell us. Really important stuff. Don't bother trying to learn this. I'll give Dave a PDF of this so you can put it up, and it's all in there. There's loads of stuff that you might want to know about the binocular, which you're not going to get from what it says on the cover plates. Loads of stuff about the prisms, and loads of stuff about coatings and stuff like that, which it just doesn't tell you at all. And there might be things that you want to know. So what it comes down to is really the only way to find out if binoculars are any good is to get the things, hold them up to your head, and see if they work for you. Right, I'm going to try to... Am I now live, Dave? As in my face? Hello?
You've always been live, Steve.
No,
let's just have a look. Let's see what we can do. Because
right, what I want to do is
if I make you the host, yeah, and then if you share your screen, do you come up full size?
Resume share, pause share.
If you unshare your screen.
No, I'm not getting that at all. Can you see me, or can you see my screen?
You should have at the bottom share screen.
No,
and you should be able to, or at the top you should have stop sharing.
I've got new share.
Try hitting Alt S on your keyboard.
Alt S.
Well, that's not.
Aha, here we go.
Oh, there we go.
Right.
Thank you very much for that.
So things to
Remember
avoid.
that one.
Yeah, thank you very much. And do I do Alt S to go back the other way? We'll find out, won't we? Okay, things to, right, can I come back? Things to avoid are what I call BSOs. This is a BSO. It's a binocular shaped object. It is one of the worst bits of muck I've ever come across. I'm going to demonstrate a few things with it. Well, first of all, you can see here, I imagine, it's a zoom binocular. There's no such thing as a good zoom binocular. Secondly, it's got these wonderful latest ruby coatings on them. Now, binocular coatings are meant to stop them reflecting a load of light. Now, Vixen, these are my lovely little Vixens here, do particularly nice coatings. And I'm going to shine a reflection of this coating up on the ceiling there, which...
Hi, folks. If you want to see it bigger, I just found out if you click top right of Steve's video, click the 3 dots and click pin video, he gets bigger. Okay, carry on, Steve.
Okie doke. And can you see a reflection on the ceiling up there? Not at all, because these are anti-reflective coatings. They increase light transmission. Now, these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful latest ruby coatings, have a look what we get. Now, it's not coming out, the color's not rendition. On my ceiling, that is a red reflection. That is not anti-reflective at all. What they're doing is they are rejecting the red end of the spectrum, so they don't have to properly color correct for it. So that is that's the reason they have those ruby red coatings. And the result of that is, when you look through these things at anything white, what you get is you know, the entire universe looks like it's undergone some sort of zombie apocalypse or something like that. It's this horrible, deathly, horrible grey color you get to it. Now, the other thing is, you've got those nice big lenses there, you think, and this is what a lot of them do. Let's whip this off. And you can see down there, difficult to see, it's got a torch on that. And you could see at the entrance to the prism housing, you see it's actually stopped down quite a lot. So when you do something like shine a torchlight the other way through this, to see if I can get this onto the for you. There you go. You measure that, it's only slightly just under 50 mil. These things are effectively just under 50 millimeter. Not only that, they screw this thing back up together. Don't know why I bother really. There we go. So not only that, the zoom, the narrow end is like looking down a toilet roll tube. They're horrible for that. The eyepieces rock like mad, so you can't get a good focus. Well, your best focus is rubbish anyway. And you've got 2 images for the price of 1. I mean, they are, you know, sort of, that's 80 quid's worth of binocular, and it really is not worth it. And that's the sort of rubbish that people are being having foisted off on them. So that's sort of thing I'm trying not to get. Hello, where are we gone? There we go. Right. So let's come back to this. Are we back on full screen now?
No, not yet. You just need to share your screen. You share whatever you've...
Right, I will get that.
There you go. Yep.
Okie doke. So avoid BSOs, binocular shaped objects. Avoid zoom, because zoom is ultimate rubbish. There's no such thing as good binoculars. Avoid ruby coatings. And then any focus-free binoculars, what they do is they set it to what's called the hyperfocal distance. And what that does is your eyes focus for you. So it's actually set at about 70% of the infinity focus. But it's okay for bright terrestrial stuff, absolute rubbish for astronomy. And the same with the quick focus, like the Tasco zip focus or something like that. Because it's so quick, you've got about a quarter of a turn from, you know, sort of 3 meters to other side of infinity. You cannot get a good focus. Okay, moving on. How do we choose our targets? Well, there's loads of stuff we can go for. So there's open clusters, asterisms, large diffuse nebulae, large faint galaxies, very large globulars, some for very small values of the word some, planetary nebulae, and then variable stars, double stars. So let's just have a look at a few of those. 10 by 50 bino, from a good site, that's what M31 is going to look a bit like. If you actually jiggle binoculars slightly, you'll see it shiver a little bit, and you might start seeing little bits of more of the galaxy and the spiral arms round out there. But that's about it. Okay. M33 looks a bit like that, so, you know, sort of hardly impressive. Planetary nebulae. This is the best one, folks. Planetary nebulae. There we go. That's M27, that little very slightly rectangular thing there. And that's the biggest and best one. So, you know, really detecting it, yes. Getting any structure, not a chance. Globular clusters, M13, which is, even though it's not the biggest one from here, because it's better placed, it's sort of probably the easiest one to get like that. But this is now where we start coming into our own, is when we start looking at things like asterisms, because they just don't fit into the field of view of a lot of telescopes. This is Kemble's Cascade. So you've got here a whole load of 9th magnitude stars, bright one in the middle. When I first came up to the Northern Hemisphere, Bob Myson showed me that. He said, it's a bit like a wristwatch, isn't it? Wristwatch strap. But you've got this little cluster down there. And in the autumn, in the evenings, this is almost vertical. It's like a little ribbon waterfall falling into a splash pool. Love it. This one, anybody who knows Eddie Carpenter from Cotswold Astronomical Society? Eddie loves showing people this. That star at the bottom there is the bright star in the middle of the W of Cassiopeia. And Gamma Cassiopeia, I think it is. And just above here, and you can't see it on star charts, and sort of disappears if you magnify it too much, but in 10 by 50 binoculars, it is just stands out. It's this here. It's Eddie's coaster. Eddie thinks of it as a roller coaster. And a few years ago, there was a campaign to try and get this actually recognized on the sort of semi-formal list of named asterisms. Anyway, so Eddie's coaster's there now, and good on him. He's a lovely old gentleman and worth doing. Colander 399, you probably mostly know, that's the coat hanger in Vulpecula. Really, actually quite a nice thing for other purposes as well. In this whole cluster here, you've got stars of a whole range of different magnitudes. So it's really a magnitude chart, and you can work out the limiting magnitude of your instrument. Colander 70. This is the cluster I say that, you know, everybody's seen and nobody knows. So those are the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And this whole area around here is this whole OB association, these hot blue white stars. They're beautiful. And you've got this whole sort of S shape here, curve. Oops, go back again. S-shaped curve here, curving between there. So, you know, I'm going to really spoil it for you now. You can say, okay, when you see that again, yeah, you can remember S, that's for Steve who showed it to you. But if that's too much of a horror for you, carry it on. And here's the wings of a swan. We've got a swan going through there. Oh, it says pareidolia, but it's fun. It's the sort of thing we can do. Pleiades, lovely, fit inside something like this. So we could be watching Venus go through it next day and enjoy the whole scene. Most people, when they see Pleiades first time through binoculars, go, wow. It's sort of like almost like someone's spilt diamond dust on the sky. Coming up in the summer, things like M24, the star cloud. That is probably the most stars you will see in any one place in binoculars at any one time. Fantastic. So these are things that binoculars are really good for. And if you push up your big binos, so one thing I love, and actually the reason I got my Miyuchis was I saw somebody else's, and I thought I really want some of those. And that's the sort of detail you can get in something like M42. So how do you find out what to watch, what to look at? So I do a binocular tour in sky at night. Every month. It's just 6 objects, mostly 10 by 50s, usually 1 or 2 for 15 by 70s require a little bit more. If you think you might struggle with stuff, everything I put in there that I put down for 10 by 50s are things I've seen in 40 mil binos. So, you know, this takes an account of different, you know, people's different observing situations. On my website, I do a free monthly newsletter. You can subscribe to it. It's a Binocular Sky newsletter, and that just gives you the best stuff to do for that month. Or you can just grab it off the website. If you subscribe, you don't get the next month. You start with the next month. So you can so that. Also on the website, I've got. I was actually trying to learn to program in PHP and MySQL and stuff like that because I feel I should do that. Page object selection, you put in your latitude, put in your horizon altitude. So if you've got gunge up to 25 degrees because of LED light, you can do that. Binocular aperture, sort of object you want, constellation you want, any limiting magnitude, the order in which you want it, and then you can submit your search. It'll give you things, and you can click on those. Alternatively, there's monthly maps, and there's a chart with them which tells you what. So orange are open clusters, and lilac are multiple stars, green are planetaries, and so on and so forth. Yellow are globulars. And if you hover over one of them, it will tell you what it is. You click on it, it'll take you to a chart and take you to the page for that object. And with each object, it's got find a chart, tells you a bit about it, shows you how to find it, which is quite important, and then shows you what it might look like. One as a sort of find a chart, and 2 as an image of what you can look through. So the idea is that you can find stuff, you can get stuff on there, and it should help you to find it, should help you to go for it. I've got about 200 objects on there at the moment, and my object is to try to get up to about 600 while I'm still on the green side of the turf, coronavirus permitting. Okay, the other thing to do, hard sell at the end of the talk, is get one of my books, Binocular Astronomy, or this one, Discover the Night Sky Through Binoculars, which I'm really proud of. It shows you how to do it. And so what I really think is that you should get at least one of that one for everybody you know. And thank you for listening, and thank you for letting me indulge myself in something I feel really passionate about. And back over to you, Dave.
Okay, excellent. Thanks very much, Steve. Okay, let me, I need to unmute everybody, but I can't see the button for that at the moment, which is slightly annoying. Hold on. Unmute me and... I usually get a button down here to say unmute everybody. So if you can unmute yourselves, folks.
I've done that.
If you've got any questions, because I'd like to finish before 5:02, so we can all get out and show our healthcare workers, anybody working in supermarkets, fire service, etc., etc. Okay, so get out there and show your appreciation at 8 o'clock. Okay, so if anybody's got any questions, please.
Next meeting Tuesday. Sorry, is next Tuesday. Next
Sorry?
meeting.
The next meeting is next Tuesday. It's all on the web page, so have a look on the web page.
And I'd have to give you the link. The link, does it come give you the link?
Yes, it gives you the link. Everything's on the web page. So
on the web page for virtual astronomy club, yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all there for next week. Yep. Okay, any questions for Steve then? Brilliant, Steve. Really good. Are there any models of binoculars that you would recommend?
At the moment, if you're going for 10 by 50s, the ones I really like are their Opticron Adventurer TWP. The WP is waterproof, and they're about 80 quid, and they are absolutely stunning. When I reviewed them, I said on the review that this is, if there's a better binocular for less than 125 quid, I don't know of it. They really are stunningly good binoculars for the price, and they're very light.
Steve?
Sorry?
Can you repeat the name of the binoculars, please, Steve?
Yes, Opticron Adventurer TWP. If you look on my website, which is binocularsky.com, I've got a review of them up there, so you can sort of get an idea of what I thought. But there's nobody who I've recommended them to who hasn't come back and said, wow, they are really good. So I'm pleased about those. Really, it depends how much you want to spend. You know, I say we're cheapskates. You know, if we spend 600 quid on a binocular, we think that's ridiculous. Whereas, you know, you take birders, you know, they'll get something like a Swarovski 10 by 50. They'll spend 1,800 quid on it and think nothing of it because you know, that's their thing.
What about hundreds? Is there anything reasonable for in 100?
It depends on how much you want to spend. I mean, if you want to spend £1,000, the APMs, Appos with angled eyepieces, the rest are absolutely brilliant, and you can change the eyepieces, so you can change your magnification. But you have to mount them. So, you know, by the time you've bought, you know, decent tripod, parallelogram mount, all that, you know, it's starting to mount up a bit. The lower priced ones they tend to have issues with them, but they will still show you, you know, a heck of a lot more. But it's like everything else. You tend to get what you pay for. You certainly don't get really good stuff incredibly cheap. You do sometimes get a load of rubbish very expensive, but that's there. But if anyone's got specific questions or wants to try and, you know, sort of bounce ideas off me, just contact me through the website or through Dave, or, you know, I'm sort of around on Twitter and Facebook and that, and, you know, we can talk to individual things individually, you know, and I'll help you to, you know, make the best choice you can, really.
I have a question for you. I've got a pair of 6-inch Terrascan binoculars made by Peter Drew. I wonder if you've ever had a chance to use Terrascans reflecting binoculars, or what your views are on them.
I haven't used Terrascans. I know Peter. Peter is he's made some absolutely fantastic binoculars. Unfortunately, you probably know that they had a break-in some years ago, and a lot of his stuff got nicked.
Yeah.
Todd Madden. But no, he's. Last time I was up there was when he was putting together some. Oh, what were they? I think they were the Skywatcher 100mm Evo Star tubes, and making a collimating and focusing collimating and adjusting mechanism for those. But no, they're. If Peter Drew made something, I would take it without question.
Oh yes, I mean they're very, very good quality. Do you know what I mean? They're made basically. It's 2 6-inch. I think they were Helios telescopes, and he's made prisms with them and a rack and pinion focuser at the top.
Yeah.
So
he's a genius, absolute genius, that man.
Yeah, I've been to see him a few times at Tubman, and he's not far from me. So yeah.
Ah, right. Yeah, good. No, he's.
And how about image stabilization? Canon used to do one.
Oh, there's loads of them. Canon do loads of them. The old ones, they tend to swim a little bit. The new ones are absolutely stunning. The very new ones, they're using the same stabilization as they use on their image stabilized lenses, and you've got 2 stabilization buttons, one for when you're panning and the other one for when you've acquired your object. And I don't know how it works, but it does, and it's absolutely brilliant. I had this thing where I was holding them up to my eyes, and I was tensing, so I was shaking like mad. And you've got this thing where you can see the binoculars shaking all over the place, and the image absolutely rock steady there. The thing is, they're expensive, and for my point of view, yeah, a 70mm binocular on a decent quality one on a monopod and trigger grip is less than an image stabilized one, and I can see more with it. But if you some of these Canon ones are brilliant, and Opticron are just getting into the game as well with a completely different system.
To go out and clap. I think that's just about it.
Steve?
Yep.
Just bringing us up to date on actual topical observing, flavor of the month is C 2019 Y4 Atlas. Have you had a look at it, and what does it look like?
Oh, it's in.
Be brief, Steve, because we're going to finish very
Okay,
soon.
it's a very, very tiny little fuzzy blob at the moment. With any, I've had it in 10 by 50s, difficult. I've had it in 16 by 70s, easy, from where I am. But that's it.
Okay, but hopefully getting better.
Oh, we really hope so.
We hope so. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Steve. Thanks for a brilliant presentation. Learned a lot more about binoculars than I did before. So
probably a load of stuff you didn't really want to know. Yeah.
Probably,
anyway,
yeah.
well, thanks everybody for coming. You know, it's
okay,
thanks Dave for organising it.
All I can say is keep safe, keep well, and get out there and show your appreciation at 8 o'clock. Great.
Indeed.
Bye, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Bye.